Welcome to Continuing Education Module Number 1, Readability, Formulas, Scales, and Assessments. In this presentation, we will talk about the importance of plain, clear language, review some of the common readability scales and formulas, especially looking at its historical development, and identify tools to know which resources to use for learners. Readability is the ease with which a reader can understand a written text. In natural language, the readability of text depends on its content, the complexity of its vocabulary and syntax, and its presentation, such as typographic aspects, such as font size, line height, character spacing, and line length. Researchers have used various factors to measure readability, such as speed of perception, visibility, reflex blink technique, eye movements, fatigue in reading, engram analysis, perceptibility at a distance and in peripheral vision, rate of work and reading speed, word difficulty, and cognitively motivated features. Readability is more than simple legibility, which is a measure of how easily a reader can distinguish individual letters or characters from each other. Higher readability eases reading effort and speed for any reader, but it is especially important for those who do not have high reading comprehension. In readers with average or poor comprehension, raising the readability level of text from mediocre to good can make a difference between success and failure of its communication goals. The earliest reading ease assessment is the subjective judgment termed text leveling. Formulas do not fully address the various content, purpose, design, visual input, and organization of a text. Text leveling is commonly used to rank the reading ease of text in areas where reading difficulties are easy to identify, such as in books for young children. At higher levels, ranking reading ease becomes more difficult as individual difficulties become harder to identify. This has led to better ways to assess reading ease. In the 1920s, the scientific movement in education looked for tests to measure students' achievement to aid in the curriculum development. Teachers and educators had long known that to improve reading skill, readers, especially beginning readers, need reading material that closely matches their ability, not to mention their interests. University-based psychologists did much of the early research, but that was later taken up by textbook publishers. Word skill was the best sign of intellectual development and the strongest predictor at that time of reading ease. In 1921, Thorndike published Teacher's Word Book, which contained the frequencies of 10,000 words. It made it easier for teachers to choose books that matched class reading skills. It also provided a basis for future research on reading ease. Until computers came along, word frequency lists were the best aids for grading reading ease of texts. In 1981, the World Book of Encyclopedia listed the grade levels of 44,000 individual words. During the recession of the 1930s, the U.S. government invested in adult education. In 1931, Douglas Walpole and Ralph Tyler published What Adults Want to Read About. It was a 2-year study of adult reading interests. Their book showed that not only what people read, but what they would like to read. They found that many readers lacked suitable reading materials. They would have liked to learn, but reading materials were too hard for them. Lyman Bryson of Columbia University found that many adults had poor reading ability due to poor education. Even though colleges had long tried to teach how to write in a clear and readable style, Bryson found that it was rare. He wrote that such language is the result of discipline and artistry that few people who have ideas will take the trouble to achieve. If simple language were easy, many of our problems would have been solved long ago. Bryson helped to set up the Readability Laboratory at Columbia University. Two of his students were Irving Lorge and Rudolf Flesch, both of whom you'll hear more about later in this presentation. Let's start in 1934. Ralph Ojman investigated adult reading skills, factors that most directly affect reading ease, and causes of each level of difficulty. He did not invent a formula, but rather a method for assessing the difficulty of materials for parent education. He was the first to assess the validity of this method by using 16 magazine passages tested on actual readers. He evaluated 14 measurable and 3 reported factors that affect reading ease. Ojman emphasized the reported features, such as whether the text was coherent or unduly abstract. He then used his 16 passages to compare and judge the reading ease of other texts, a method we now call scaling. He showed that even though these factors cannot be measured, they also cannot be ignored. In 1935, William Gray and Bernice Leary published What Makes a Book Readable, one of the most important books in readability research. Like Dala and Tyler, they focused on what makes books readable for adults of limited reading ability. Their book included the first scientific study of the reading skills of American adults. The sample included 1,690 adults from a variety of settings and regions. The test used a number of passages from newspapers, magazines, and books, as well as a standard reading test. They found a mean score of 7.81, which translates into the 8th month of the 7th grade. About 1/3 of those participating read at the 2nd to 6th grade level, 1/3 at the 7th to 12th grade level, and a further third at the 13th to 17th grade level. The authors emphasize that 1/2 of the adult population at that time lacked suitable reading materials. They wrote, "For them, the enriching values of reading are denied unless materials reflecting adult interests are adapted to their needs. The poorest readers, 1/6 of the adult population, need simpler materials for use in promoting functioning literacy and establishing fundamental reading habits." Gray and Leary then analyzed 228 variables that affect reading ease and divided them into 4 types: content, style, format, and organization, in that order. While they found there was no way to measure content, format, or organization, they could measure the variables of style. Among the 17 significant measurable style variables, they selected 5 to create a formula: average sentence length, number of different hard words, number of personal pronouns, percentage of unique words, and the number of prepositional phrases. Their formula had a correlation of 0.645 with comprehension as measured by reading tests given to about 800 adults. In 1939, Irving Lorge published an article that reported other combinations of variables that indicate difficulty more accurately than the ones Gray and Leary used. His research also showed that the vocabulary load is the most important factor for reading difficulty. In 1944, Lorge published his Lorge Index, a readability formula that used 3 variables and set the stage for simpler and more reliable formulas that followed. By 1940s, investigators had successfully used statistical methods to analyze reading ease, found that unusual words and sentence length were among the first causes of reading difficulty, and used vocabulary and sentence length in formulas to predict reading ease. In 1943, Rudolf Flesch published his PhD dissertation, Marks of a Readable Style, which included a readability formula to predict the difficulty of adult reading material. Investigators in many fields began using it to improve communications. One of the variables it used was personal references, such as names and personal pronouns. In 1948, Flesch published his reading ease formula in 2 parts. Rather than using grade levels, it used a scale from 0 to 100, with 0 equivalent to the 12th grade and 100 equivalent to the 4th grade. The second part of the formula predicts human interest by using personal references and the number of personal sentences. The new formula correlated to 0.70 with McCall-Crabb's reading tests. You can see the original formula here below. Publishers discovered that the Flesch formulas could increase readership up to 60%. Flesch's work also made an enormous impact on journalism. The Flesch reading ease formula became one of the most widely used and tested and reliable readability metrics. In 1951, Farr, Jenkins, and Patterson simplified the formula further by changing the syllable count. In 1975, in a project sponsored by the U.S. Navy, the reading ease formula was recalculated to give a grade level score. The new formula is now called the Flesch-Kincaid grade level formula. The Flesch-Kincaid formula is one of the most popular and heavily tested formulas. It's the one you will most recognize from Microsoft Word. So if you are looking to identify what your own writing level is at, you can use this tool within Microsoft Word to test it. In the 1940s, Robert Gunning helped bring readability research into the workplace. In 1994, he founded the first readability consulting firm dedicated to reducing what he called the fog in newspapers and business writing. In 1952, he published The Technique of Clear Writing with his own fog index, a formula that correlates to 0.91 with comprehension as measured by reading tests. The formula is one of the most reliable and simplest to apply. The grade level equals 0.4 average sentence length plus percentage of hard words. And hard words are defined as those with more than 2 syllables. Here are the steps for using Gunning fog. You take a sample passage of at least 100 words and count the number of exact words and sentences. You divide the total number of words in the sample by the number of sentences to arrive at the average sentence length. You count the number of words of 3 or more syllables that are not proper nouns, combinations of easy words or hyphenated words, or 2-syllable verbs made into 3 with using ES or ED endings. Step 4, you divide this number by the number or words in the sample passage. For example, 25 long words divided by 100 gives you a 25% hard words. Add the ASL from step 2 and the PHW from step 4, multiply the result by 0.4, and you will get the fog index. The fog index has also undergone important changes to enable computerization of this formula after facing different opinions among scholars about counting independent clauses as separate sentences. Harry McLaughlin, a clinical psychologist, determined that word length and sentence length should be multiplied rather than added as in other formulas. In 1969, he published his SMOG, Simple Measure of Gobbledygook formula. You have to love that name. SMOG estimates the years of education the person needs to have in order to understand any piece of writing. This is known as the SMOG grade. McLaughlin suggested calculating this by using a piece which is 30 sentences or longer and doing the following: counting 10 sentences near the beginning of the text, 10 sentences in the middle, and 10 near the end, getting your total of 30 sentences. Then you count every word with 3 or more syllables. You take the square rooting the number and rounding it to the nearest 10, adding 3 to this figure, and the final figure indicates the reading level. And next we come to the one we're probably, like Flesch, most familiar with. Edward Fry developed one of the more popular reading formulas, the Fry-Graph readability formula. Fry, who worked as a Fulbright scholar in Uganda, also helped teachers to teach English as a second language for a few years, from 1963 on. In 1969, he extended the graph to primary levels. In his book, Elementary Reading Instruction, in 1977, Fry extended the graph to test through the college years. Fry advised that an individual's vocabulary continues to grow during college years, yet the reading ability varies depending on the individual and the subjects taught. Fry went on to become the director of the Reading Center at Rutgers University and an authority on how people learn to read. The Fry-Graph readability formula. Let's go through this one step by step. Select 3 samples of 100-word passages randomly from your selection of text. Eliminate the numbers from word count. Count the number of sentences in all 3 100-word passages, estimating the fraction of the last sentence to the nearest 1/10. Count the number of syllables in all 3 100-word passages, and make a table as follows. For your first 100 words, what's the number of sentences and the number of syllables? Same for the second 100 and the third 100. You're going to get a total for each of those columns, and then you're going to do the average. After that, you're going to enter the graph with the average sentence length and the number of syllables. You're going to plot a dot where the two lines intersect. The area where the dot is plotted signifies the approximate reading and grade level content of the content. If you find a greater deal of variability, you can also put more samples into the average. What we've done for some of our resources is taken a look at the Fry Index and where our resources would fall into it. So if you're looking at our Lubbock Way to Reading, book number 1 would have a correlation to Fry 0 to 1. Book number 2 would correlate to Fry level 2. Book number 3 would probably correlate towards the end of Fry 2 to 3. Book number 4 would correlate to Fry levels 3 to 5. And you'll see we've done this for each of our most popular selections. Now you'll see also some other reading levels that we talk about here. So what do these other terms mean? And these are ones that you might run across in some of the resources that you might use as a tutor. The College and Career Readiness Standards, CCRS, were released in 2013 by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Vocational and Adult Education as a guide for adult education programs that prepare learners for post-secondary college and career training. The CCRS acts as a guidepost in adult education and are meant to be used as a tool to focus on specific skills and knowledge adult learners should possess. These educational standards assist programs with adult education curriculum development, guide instructors, and provide learning goals for basic skill instruction and critical thinking skills to prepare learners for high school equivalency exams, post-secondary education, and employment. Another term is TABE, TABE 1112. So TABE is the test for adult basic education. This is a test that is used to determine your aptitudes and skill levels. The TABE is used by many companies during the hiring process or promotions, as well as those individuals who are getting their GED or are going to trade school. The first TABE, or the first test for adult basic education, was released back in 1967, and there have been subsequent versions. TABE version 11 and 12 was released in 2017 and brought together and simplified many of the different types of learning seen in previous versions. The long and short versions previously available were condensed into a single test, and content was tweaked to allow greater accuracy of student placement within the overall system. Cassis. The Cassis skill level descriptors show a continuum of skills from beginning through advanced adult secondary. They provide descriptions of adults' general job-related ability in reading, mathematics, oral communication, and writing. The skill level descriptors explain in general terms what most learners can accomplish at the Cassis scale score level in a specific skill area. Results from Cassis tests are reported on a common numerical scale. The scale has been verified and validated on more than 3 million adult and youth learners. The Cassis scale is divided into 5 levels: A, beginning literacy, to E, advanced secondary, each encompassing a range of scores. So if we go back to that table we showed, Cassis here is showing levels A through D. If one of your learners was to get to a level E, they would no longer be required to be within our learning parameters. So we focus simply on A to D. In TABE, we're looking at L, E, M, and D. The CCRS, we're looking at levels A through D. And all of our books, as you can see, can correlate to one of those. So how do we assess a learner's reading skill? There are many resources available to a Lubbock Literacy New Brunswick tutor coordinator to help them assess a learner's skill. Many of our resources or book series will have learner assessment guides at the beginning, as well as we have specific resources such as Cara, Dala, and Learning Upgrade. In the previous chart, you saw how a learner's placement in a particular resource series corresponds to some of the reading and skill level assessments, in particular to Fry. CARA stands for Canadian Adult Reading Assessment and provides placement and diagnostic information and identifies reading patterns, enabling you to choose effective teaching strategies. The instructor's manual provides step-by-step instructions and interactive exercises on how to administer, score, and interpret CARA. The manual contains word lists, 49 graded passages that range in readability from grades 1 through 12, as well as comprehension questions. CARA provides diagnostic information, enabling the tutor coordinator to guide the tutor and learner on the most effective teaching strategies. Dala stands for Diagnostic Adult Literacy Assessment. Dala is often used as an initial assessment tool for reading. It's a user-friendly assessment specifically designed to assess the literacy skills of very beginning readers. The primary purpose of Dala is to inform instruction and measure progress. The 10 subtests provide diagnostic information that allows the tutor coordinator to identify areas of strength and weakness. You can use this information to create an individual profile of and plan effective lessons for each learner. The subtest measures a student's knowledge of print concepts and conventions, text functions, environmental print, high-frequency words, phonics, phonemic awareness, and letter names. Finally, we have Learning Upgrade. This is a digital learning app which has 22 courses and over 1,000 lessons covering math, English, and digital literacy. Students can take a placement test on their own or with their tutor coordinator when enrolling and be placed into the appropriate course level. The courses closely align with those in the Lubbock Way to Reading books, so we can easily determine their equivalency to other resources, such as on the chart in slide 22. For more information, you can check out www.learningupgrade.com. As tutors, you will not generally be required to assess your learner. This is the primary job of the tutor coordinator. However, it is always good to be able to know where your learner is starting from and where they're hoping to get to. And there are checks and balances along the way that your tutor coordinator can help you determine as necessary for your learner. This concludes our presentation on readability formulas, scales, and assessments. If you have any questions at any time, please contact your tutor coordinator, or you can call the Lubbock Literacy New Brunswick office. In Moncton, we're available at 506-384-6371. You can reach us toll-free from anywhere in the province at 1-877-633-8899, or you can email info@llnb.ca. Thank you and have a good day.